Okay, so hello and welcome to Tolkien with Friends. Today we're very excited to welcome Sapphire to the podcast, who does an amazing Mouth of Sauron cosplay. And it's very appropriate for today because we are covering the chapters The Black Gate Opens and The Land of Shadow. Thank you, Sapphire, for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your compliments about my cosplay.
Yeah.
So I'm Mouth of Sauron for a large group. I'm Sapphire Nyx. So all of my socials, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you can find me as Sapphire Nyx, where I do more than Mouth of Sauron, of course, but my main one at the moment for you guys is Mouth of Sauron today.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to stop now because I keep saying Mouth of Sauron.
You know what? That's going to be a problem for the rest of the episode because we don't really, in my notes, I've called him Mouth.
Mr. Mouth.
He doesn't have another name. And it's not even a name so much as that's like what he does now.
A title or something.
We get Lieutenant. We could call him that. But yeah. Mouth of Sauron is going to be a running theme for today because I think it's one of the most interesting parts of these chapters. But, before we dive in, do you want to talk a little bit about why Mouth of Sauron?
So, I've always loved Lord of the Rings since a young age. My parents probably showed me the movies way before I should have seen them. And I've always been sort of a bit morbid and into the macabre, so I loved...
You would have loved Anna. I mean, she's not dead. She's just not guest hosting because she just had a baby.
And seeing the Mouth of Sauron in the movie, he falls into the uncanny valley a little bit, and he was a bit twisted, and obviously they make his mouth big and all that, and just something drew me to it. And then as I got older, if I'm completely honest with you, part of the reason I did it was because of that, but also part of the reason is I have a really bad need for attention, and I like getting niche characters that I know no one else is going to cosplay. And so I picked Mouth of Sauron because those that know him would be like, oh my god, that
was exactly my reaction. Absolutely was. Yeah.
And those that don't know him would still be like, oh my god, that looks like an amazing cosplay.
Right.
So yeah,
it'd just be like, what the fuck is that? That's amazing.
So part of it was I loved the character because of how gruesome he looked in the movies, and then part of it is I knew that it was a cosplay that would turn heads.
Yeah, I love that. Was it pretty complicated to put together, or were you just kind of like, you know what, we're going for it? It doesn't really matter, or was there any daunting part of putting that cosplay together?
So the daunting part was making the helmet. I contacted another cosplayer and asked them, how did you make yours? And they said, this is roughly how I did it. And I then grabbed my stepfather and said to him, could you potentially help me with this? And he was like, I'll have a look at it. And we sort of
formal commitment. I'll have a look at it.
He says that, but then he goes all the way in making teeny models and making bigger models, and then he's measuring my head. And I work in optics, so he was like, can you get your pupil distances so that I can tell where your pupils are going to be, so I can drill holes so that you can see. And
right, of course, because so
I could see. And it was the most daunting part because it was going to be the most time consuming, and in fact he finished it about 2 weeks before I was meant to be debuting it at Comic-Con as a group with a load of other people. But it was less daunting for me once I'd given it to him, and then it was just like I bought the dress, I bought some fabric to use over the helm, and other than once I'd sorted out pushing the daunting bit onto someone else, I was chill about it all.
Yeah,
well, hey, that's the way to do it if you can.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask how you see because, of course, well, I don't know if we can post a picture or something in the edits here, but of it, but of course it covers the whole eyes, which is the point. Only the mouth shows. So you've actually got like tiny little holes that you that you look
teeny
out
tiny ones. But on some of my TikToks, you can actually see where the light's hitting it. But because the person I spoke to, they said they had like flaps that were Velcroed, and I was like, I don't want Velcro flaps where I'm walking around with it. So half the time I do end up like sort of carrying it and then shoving it on my head and just being able to see for photos so I know what direction I'm looking. But yeah, I needed to.
There's like no peripheral vision really.
No.
Yeah. Woo! That's crazy. I love it.
I love it too. Yeah, it caught my attention very early on and has been memorable ever since. So I'm so happy that we get to talk to you here now on this episode, and yeah, thank
we'll
you.
dive into the inspiration. So so I had to stop the movie a little bit before I was planning to, just because Frodo and Sam start like climbing Mount Doom really fast. So we don't technically finish all of the Black Gate opens, but we do meet the Mouth of Sauron. And that's, that's the main bulk of today, really. And for anyone curious, today's segment of movie starts at 3 hours, 7 minutes, and 16 seconds. Extended edition, of course. If you know, you know. And it ends around 3 hours, 21 minutes, and 29 seconds. But I do want to note that at about 3 hours, 7 minutes, and 30 seconds in, there's about 1 minute that we're going to ignore today. It's with Eowyn and Faramir, because it's actually a reference to the chapter The Steward and the King, which we will talk about in full in a couple of weeks. So we're not going to touch it. Timeline wise, it's correct, but we're not gonna go there today, because the Mouth of Sauron and what's going on with Sam and Frodo is enough. So today, the primary sources of tension are the negotiation with the Mouth of Sauron and Frodo and Sam being forced to march with a company of orcs. And Peter doesn't like, we get the big moments from these chapters, but we do miss some of the lead up to those events. So those are kind of like some of the things that I wanted to go through, as well as like who the heck the Mouth of Sauron is, and his background. But this section of movie starts with Aragorn and crew marching to Mordor. So I wanted to briefly discuss some of the unsaid things that they do on the road to the Black Gates, because it's not like a journey that you do in an afternoon. It takes a couple days to get there, before we get to see our bestie, the Mouth of Sauron. So, and they're nice moments too. Like, remember the statue whose head is on the ground when Frodo and Sam pass the crossroads on their way to Minas Morgul? The king who's got a crown again via the wreath of flowers, because it's been toppled over by orcs. Well, Aragorn makes sure to reunite the statue's head with his body, and like they reclaim that land for Gondor. They're kind of like testing the waters as they go, yelling out that the king has come again and that this is a part of the realm of Gondor, but they're not really challenged. There is one quick little fight scene, but their scouts knew about it ahead of time, and it's not like a big deal at all. They knew that it was like supposed to lull them into a false sense of security. But our guys, they know what is up. They cannot be tricked at this point. They're fully aware of what Sauron's kind of up to, but they're also up to something. Everybody's up to something in this chapter, ultimately. And then there's another nice little moment where Aragorn and Gandalf, they do a detour from the rest of the group to go to Minas Morgul, and they break the bridge to the city and set the field aflame. So I'm guessing that's the end of our beautiful but horrible flowers that Frodo and Sam saw when they first entered the Morgul Vale. Additionally, there is a moment where some of the men don't, like, Aragorn can tell that they are scared out of their minds, and they don't want to keep going. And he's like, you know what? You can keep your honor if you go and like hang out at this other, defend
do this other thing. Yeah. I loved that moment. That was a great moment as a future king and as a leader of an army going to a hopeless battle.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's like there's a lot of young people on this march. You know, the people that survived the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, some of them who have never even been to Minas Tirith before, and now they're going to Mordor, a land that they had only ever heard rumor of. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, they're shitting their pants a little bit, and Aragorn's like, all right, like, you don't have to go all the way. Like,
you don't have to do this, but you can go do something, go to Caer Andros, and you can still have honor.
Yeah, you can still be helpful, you know? And so, what's funny is Tolkien writes that like revived some of their resolve to go. Like, some people are like, you know what? No, I'm doing this damn thing. I'm gonna go all the way. And then the other ones were like, whew, thank God I can still do something, because I can't be looking at Mordor right in the face right now. No, thank you.
That's one of the things I was shocked when I read it, and then with the movies, that Peter Jackson didn't include, because after you've had back at Helm's Deep, where Legolas and him are having, and Aragorn are having that argument over, well, I'm going to die as one of them, you know, their children. It shows he's still thinking, you know, he's still thinking about that as well, and there's that sort of compassion of, I can see these men aren't gonna be able to make it. This time I can do something about that. We're not trapped,
right?
And it's sort of, you know, he is human. It's that, you know, he is the race of men. It's that sort of quality of, I can do something here, I'm their king, I need to do something, you guys go, we'll be here. And I remember it saying that they're going to be the last defense if they can't stop them at the Black Gate. And it's like, you know, you can be there just in case. And I think that's something that Peter Jackson should have included.
Yeah, I think that would have been really lovely, you know. And some of these things would have taken, like, I understand not going to Minas Morgul again, and I understand not doing the thing with the crown, like, you know, that'd probably take a few minutes to set up or whatever, but like, there's just shots at this point of them like riding, you know, and it would have been interesting to take a couple seconds, and maybe even it's right before they go to the Black Gate, you know, and it's like they're just some men where it's like they're like sweating, you know, and Aragorn could have been like, hey, I've got other stuff for you to do if needed, but they don't. And so when they arrive at the Black Gate, you know, I think it's still got the vibe as far as like the way the Black Gate opens and then the Mouth of Sauron comes out. One thing that's notably missing is the lack of Nazgul perched on top of the Morannon, which I thought would have been extra spooky, and like them not doing anything but just like chilling, like the fell beast and a couple of the Nazgul just like watching. Like, I feel like that would have really like got people sweating a little bit.
It's like got the threat high above and giving it some sort of other dimension than just big black walls.
Yes, because one thing that is so hard to capture about the book, so I know that that's why we haven't really talked about it so much, or about the movies, is that the sense of watchfulness every time we're near an entrance to Mordor. I mean, that was like a big deal at Minas Morgul, but it was also very true when Frodo and Sam passed the Morannon on their way around, you know? So just like this, like, you couldn't see anything happening, but like this always like foreboding watchfulness. But I feel like we could have gotten that here with the Nazgul hanging out and just acting a little bit like carrion birds, you know? And I think that would have been cool to see. Like, we've added the Nazgul to the Two Towers where they didn't need them, and Osgiliath, that whole Osgiliath thing. You could have had them lurking around here, but they take their time to show up in the movie. And you know, I feel like while the part with the Mouth of Sauron is pretty short, it's pretty on point, you know. It's like a lot cut from it, but the vibes are similar. I think the biggest difference insofar as like the way it plays out is that Aragorn is the one stepping up rather than Gandalf. And this is something that they've done before in the movies, you know, like in the last debate, Aragorn's the one that suggests this whole plan, but in the book it's Gandalf, and here it's like, Aragorn's the one that calls them, let the Lord of the Black Land come forth, and he's also the one that ends the negotiations in the movie with the head of chopping off. And it's interesting, like, whereas in the book, I feel like Gandalf is pretty much always the driver. I think it's more subtle pre-Gandalf the White. But once we have Gandalf the White, he is really like not playing games, like Aragorn, when Aragorn's alone, gets to call the shots, but like when Gandalf is there, Aragorn is listening to Gandalf and telling everyone else they should also listen to Gandalf. But here it's like Gandalf isn't really, I don't know, he's not like, they're allowing Aragorn to step up to the plate, which is interesting, I think. And when you think about his arc in the movies, like being so hesitant, he hasn't ever even done anything to be like, okay, I am gonna be the king. It was just like Elrond gave him the sword, and he's like, all right, we're gonna go get the ghost army. And then ever since then, I mean, there is like a slight nod where like Gandalf kind of nods at him when they see each other on the battlefield after everything's over, but there's never really been this moment for Aragorn to actually say like, I'm doing the damn thing. Whereas in the book, of course, we always knew that he was going to do this, but he's just like very careful about his timing. So yeah, I think that's kind of one of the bigger differences, aside from like, just things they leave out, but the way that it plays, it's a little bit more Aragorn. But one thing that I do love about that piece is the speech that they give to Aragorn. It's not in the book, but the whole, sons of Gondor, of Rohan, my brothers, I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. And it's, if anything, this is the only kind of reference to Aragorn understanding that these guys are scared shitless, like what we were just talking about. Like he doesn't let them leave, obviously. But this is kind of, I feel like this speech is inspired by that action that Aragorn takes in the book. And I think it's really beautiful. It's a really well written, it's one of those moments where it's like, Fran Walsh and Philippa and Peter like got this story, and I could totally see Aragorn saying this speech. He doesn't, and it's very cinematic, so like Tolkien writes at this point when the gates open and shit's about to go down, he says that Aragorn doesn't have time to really like do anything. They just go back and they get ready to kick booty, but it's such a great movie moment. It's truly an iconic lines from Aragorn.
Oh, definitely. And one thing that someone once said to me was, you can tell how well it's written because people who read the books obviously would, like you said, could compare it to him letting them go somewhere else. And he said that my friend said you can tell that it's really well written because it doesn't sound like Lord Farquaad from Shrek going, some of you may die. I'm willing to make. Because obviously it could have not written well sound like he's going, I know you're scared, but
but too
whatever.
Bad. Yeah.
It's so well written that it does come off as, look, we're in it together. We've got a job to do. This is important rather than
Exactly. It's very good, and I'm glad it's there. Like sometimes you do need a nice speech to pump everybody up. So I thought it was cool. But not to skip over our man of the hour, who is the Mouth of Sauron. So he's really cool. So let's get into it. So with the Mouth of Sauron, we don't really get a lot. I mean, he comes out and he has like a shocking, I feel like, entrance, giant gate open just enough for him to like pop out. But Tolkien does try to tell us a little bit about him, which is funny because it's like you can see Tolkien like playing with how much he wants to give you, because he could probably go on for pages if you let him, but he's given this, what is it, like the textual ruins vibe, like he's only going to give you a little taste of who this guy is. And like we were just talking about before we started recording, is that Tolkien describes his steed more than he describes the Mouth of Sauron. He does make a slight comparison to the ring race, saying that they're both robed in black, but he isn't a wraith, he's a man. He's like, but they have like a similar robe vibe. Yeah. And this man, as we have just learned he is, has been serving Sauron so long that he had forgotten his own name. And then later we find out that he's been serving Sauron since Barad-dûr first rose again, which I did some calculations, and that's at least 68 years of service at this point. But the way that it's written, to me, says that Sauron, like 68 years, sure, that's like a feasible amount of like life for a dude in this time. However, it sounds like you've been working for 68 years. So that makes me think you weren't like a baby when you got this job. So I'm given the vibe that he is somehow, either by learning from Sauron or Sauron has given him some kind of unnaturally long witchy life. And it says, and I also back this up because he says that the Mouth of Sauron was of the race of the Black Númenóreans, who I think we've talked about before, but these are the Númenóreans who had established dwellings in Middle-earth, outside of Númenor during the years of Sauron's domination, and they worshipped him, being enamored of evil knowledge. So they're just like the evil version of Númenóreans, and they still exist. It doesn't really go into it as much, but they have some dwellings that used to be like South Gondor, but are no more, and they're chilling there. But it just makes me think how if we want to lean into the idea of the Mouth of Sauron living for a weirdly long time, is there any chance that we could see his origins in the Rings of Power, considering the fact that they are compressing the timeline and things aren't going to be like as smooth, maybe towards the end or something? I definitely feel like there's going to be some like mixing and matching with like end of Second Age, beginning of Third Age. So
you could get like a little teenager Mouth of Sauron.
Maybe.
Just like really skinny and pale. And
yeah. It just makes me think of like, because I think they have to deal with the idea of the Black Númenóreans, or like the Númenóreans who, kind of shunned, served Sauron and Morgoth, and, shunned the teachings of the elves, So it would be interesting if they, even if they don't do too much with it, but if they laid that breadcrumb somehow of like somebody ends up being this guy,
like just an Easter egg, just for some of us to just be like,
yeah, we know that one,
yeah. And he's the only version of this that we see in Lord of the Rings, so I feel like it would just kind of make sense a little bit to have more of those callbacks, not like a direct like, hey, remember those movies you love, but just a reference that people could sink their teeth into a little bit. I mean, there is Aragorn making a reference to Queen, the cat lady, Black Númenórean Queen,
Baruchiel, something like that,
whatever her name is. She was a bad lady, but he like makes a random reference to her in the Mines of Moria. So I don't know if they would ever get into that actually, because there's not really a lot of information about her. So I mean, there's some in the appendices. I could say that.
It could be like an after credit scene.
Yeah, that would be so fun.
Just a shot of the queen with all her cats.
Yeah, and it's funny because it talks about how she hated cats, and then makes cats her servant. But anyway.
Oh, we digress.
But he is the only like black Numenorian that we really meet, you know, in the trilogy. Yeah. So, and he's obviously not like I wouldn't say like a typical, like
no,
not every black Numenorian.
Know how we got that way.
Right?
I have questions.
I'm throwing it out there. Maybe. I don't know. But it'd be kind of cool. I also feel like he could give us some, because he says things like thee and thou and all of that, you know. I think it would be interesting if they used him as inspo for like the way Numenorians maybe speak in their more formal settings or something.
Yeah, his way of speaking is very different, and in the book especially you get more of a sense of that, like him calling it elvish glass, and you know, he's got such a way with words that only like that seems to be quite unique to him. And like over here, especially in the UK, that even when Tolkien was writing was old, so you can tell that Tolkien's really been thinking about how do I make him other and make him seem older to my readers, because obviously over here in the UK we'd be reading it and being like, oh yeah, that's old even back then, because thee and thou is to us Shakespearean. So
yeah, just to read like one sentence. Then thou art the spokesman, old greybeard. Have we not heard of thee at whiles, and of thy wanderings, ever hatching plots and mischief at a safe distance? But this time thou hast stuck out thy nose too far, Master Gandalf, and thou shalt see what comes to him who sets his foolish webs before the feet of Sauron the Great.
So, it's so cool.
It's very cool, very like epic, very biblical.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's theatrical, like Shakespearean. I love that reference. Yeah. It does feel a little bit, I'm like, really? Like,
he's very dramatic. He's very extra.
Yeah.
Anyway, we knew that anyway. He's turning up on, you know, a steed that's like flaming. He's got his like helm on. He's got like this black robe.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, when you think about it, I'm sure that he probably does dress up a little bit for his job if he is like one of Sauron's main dudes. But at the same time, he probably hasn't had to show up for anybody but orcs mostly. So he's like, I'm putting on all my best shit for this.
It's finally happened. I can finally do my job, because obviously he says he's an ambassador. He's probably never actually done anything.
Any like ambassador.
I know. I almost wonder, because we know from Fellowship and the Council of Elrond when Glóin is talking about why they're there, and they did get a herald or somebody from Mordor being like, we can give you some of these rings back if you tell us where Bilbo is. I'm like, at the most, if that even was the Mouth of Sauron, which might not have been, it could have been somebody else. Yeah. I'm just saying he's not busy. He's not a busy guy.
He's just hating on Saruman and living in Mordor. Yeah. That's his life at this point.
He wants Isengard.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about that. Well, before we get to that piece, I do just want to say that like there is in the book, like I know in the movie we see Aragorn like chop his head off, but in the book we've got Mouth of Sauron really like showing up like a badass. But when he addresses Aragorn when he first comes out, you know, and they do use the, you know, it needs more to make a king than a piece of elvish glass. He meets Aragorn's eye, and it says, for a moment they strove thus, but soon, though Aragorn did not stir nor move hand to weapon, the Mouth of Sauron quailed and gave back as if menaced with a blow. I am a heralded ambassador. I may not be assailed, he cried. I'm like, okay. Not really the badass move that I thought you would make.
No, don't look at me so hard.
Yeah.
Ah.
He's like, okay, I am shy. I haven't done this
But
a
don't
lot.
look me in the eyes.
Like,
But what
I'm
eye
the
contact was Aragorn making if they were in
I
the
just-
eyes? Wait, what? Just
You can't see this,
staring.
but I'm just trying to be like serious.
Staring
Stare-
into his. Yeah, that was kind of a weird, I don't know, head. There's a lot of head talk though. I mean, Tolkien does that with the elves a lot, so
Yeah,
I suppose it's not that weird.
I know, but it's interesting to think about Aragorn being able to do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like shitty Numenorian to good Numenorian in a way. Like,
Yeah.
not
True.
exactly, but a little bit.
But I guess also with Aragorn, he's become confident in himself, and he sort of started off in that lack of confidence in who he's meant to be, and I don't want to be that person, I don't want to be king, and then he slowly brought himself up into it, and the fact that he can now make eye contact with this person as king and be like, I'm not moving, you're looking away first.
Mm-hmm.
And the mouth of Sauron, someone who's meant to be so reassured, you know, he's part of this big power, is actually the one to look away and freak out.
Yeah.
It's how powerful and confident, to me, Aragorn is now in his ability to sort of lead these people. It's like, no, I'm not backing down.
Yeah, and that's why Aragorn's hot. But one thing that I also wanted to point out is that when they're talking to the Mouth of Sauron, you know, it's not just him like dealing out insults to everybody, right? It's a little bit. And Gandalf calls him on it. He's like,
he does. He's
"What's your
less
deal?"
insolence.
Yes, he's like, calm it down, dude. But he is really there to be like, hey, like, of course he taunts them with the mithril shirt and
The shiny
you know,
shirt.
yeah.
I don't know why I love that term, but shiny shirt. There's just something about it.
Shiny shirt.
The shiny shirt.
I love that too. But it's great, and it's like, you know, when I texted Anna about this because I knew that she would like the scene. She was like, the more creepy guys, the better. And I'm like, you got it. But she was like, this was a great extended scene, and I was like, oh my god, I don't even remember. I don't know the difference right anymore. And I was like, wow, that sucks that that's extended and not in the theatrical, because the shirt, like, you see one of the, you know, we do see one of the orcs take the shirt away, but then that means that nobody ever gets the payoff of like, what the heck was the plan for that shirt? Like, you just think an orc is going to be walking around with a mithril coat.
With the shiny shirt. Oh, so they don't show any of the tokens, but they do show the ambassador a bit. I don't know.
Even know. Honestly,
I don't
it was
know
extended
in the theatrical ones. I should find a copy and watch it.
I've watched both.
Thank you.
Yay,
So,
thank you.
They don't show any of it. So they get there, he does the speech, and then it goes into the battle. They don't show
gosh.
the Mouth of Sauron.
That is actually a personal affront to me, to Sapphire, and to Kelly.
I can't believe
I'm
that.
saying only true fans know what my cosplay is, because everybody else has watched the theatrical and should be ashamed.
You guys, I'm not saying that every single extended. No, I changed my mind. You have to see the extended edition. There are so many. There's just too many of them that feel required. There are like a couple where I'm like, okay, yeah, that feels extended, but this doesn't. This feels like it's supposed to be there, you know?
I didn't watch extended until we moved in with my stepfather at the age of 16, and he only had theatrical, and we were like, what is wrong with you? We must bring the extended with us when we move properly. And
I don't think I ever even purchased the extended. Like, I waited, and every Christmas, whenever like the next movie would come out, but also the next extended like edition would come out, and that's when I would get them anyway. These were my Christmas presents for 3 years. We would just hang on. I was like, at Christmas time, I'm gonna get the extended. Yeah, so it's painful that a lot of people don't probably know that there's that payoff of like he's like taunting them with Frodo's shirt, and it's interesting to think about like Sauron knows that Frodo is somewhere in there, and I think it's gnawing at him a little bit, but it's also interesting to think about like how much does he, I'm assuming he knows that he's not like captured anymore, that he was captured, because we know the Nazgul will probably, because the Nazgul were chasing them out of Cirith Ungol when we last saw them, so he probably knows that they're not like in his grasp. He's probably not too worried about it because they are hobbits, you know. And he's like, we'll get them. But it's interesting. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna play all the cards that I've got. So we're gonna taunt these guys, and he uses that to say like, we're gonna torture him so horribly, like over long, like in slow years, you know, unless you agree to these terms. And in this part really reminds me of Saruman, you know, and how the reaction, because at this point Tolkien kind of like takes, it's kind of like a bird's eye view in the way, like the perspective. It's not like from a particular character or anything, even though it could have been Pippin. But it says, name the terms, said Gandalf steadily. But those nearby saw the anguish in his face and how he seemed an old and wizened man, crushed, defeated at last. They did not doubt that he would accept. This is almost exactly the way it's written when the Rohirrim hear Saruman talking to Theoden or Gandalf. You know, they're like, oh, you know, Theoden's going to agree with Saruman, or oh, Gandalf and Saruman are going to go off and, you know, make their plans together and leave us here waiting at the door. It's written the same way. So I feel like, in addition to probably living longer than he should be, I feel like the Mouth of Sauron has some of that power of the voice, you know, and probably how he got that job in the first place.
It's interesting how you said about the playing all his cards, because probably, at least to me, Sauron is probably thinking, at most I can get them to agree to what I want them to. At best, they might know something of where these hobbits are, and they might let something slip, because if they're going to go, oh, well, we know you don't have him, they might know where he is then, and at least I can get, it's a win-win potentially for him. So, right. Yeah. And obviously, like you said, in the movie, obviously, both the Merry and Pippin are there, and they give it away and are like, oh my God, no. But I did find it interesting, which I wanted to touch on, was the fact that they're not both meant to be there, and it's meant to be like a really hard thing for both of them. And I think that would have even made the reaction even more, because it'd be like, I can't remember, is it Pippin who's there?
Pippin.
In the book? Yeah.
Yes.
So Pippin obviously is meant to be the one that everybody thinks is the weaker one out of all of them. And the fact that, you know, Merry's potentially, you know, really ill back at Minas Tirith, and obviously he doesn't know where Sam and Frodo are, his reaction in that would have been even more poignant, because it's literally a case of he's got none of his friends or family there now. And right. I think it's interesting that Peter Jackson didn't decide to keep that, because I think it would have made that scene even worse for that moment of him crying out.
Yeah, we don't even touch on the fact that even in the extended like House of Healing scene, we know that Eowyn is sick, we know that Faramir is sick, but he just excludes the fact that Merry, we see Merry actually is the one that touches the Witch King, but he doesn't get any of the ill effects of that. I mean, he obviously does, but in the movie, he just not, he's fine. You know,
and he's running across the battlefield.
Yeah, he's ready for battle.
It's weird though, because Pippin does go up to him and it's like, you know, and Merry is like, are you going to bury me? And he's like, oh, I'm going to take care of you. You know, like there is that. They did keep that, but then I guess he's just all better.
But it was also meant to be Pippin's sort of like moment of like, because he's run away at all the others, and even in Minas Tirith in the movie, he's like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. And then it was meant to be his moment of like, he's the only hobbit there, He's got to do this for his people. You know, he doesn't really know what's going on back home, but he knows it's not going to be good. He wants to be there at the final stand, and he's finally, you know, being the fully grown adult hobbit he's meant to be, and maturing. And it's like, nope, no maturing for you.
Yeah, it is interesting that like they reunite Merry and Pippin for this.
And I swear, if it's for that one scene where they all run after Aragorn, and just because they find it funny that there's the two little hobbits, I would riot. I would riot.
One would have been just as funny.
I know. I know, but and it's I know the hobbits are constantly not getting their due in the movies. Like they're lovely, and what we do get of them is great, but you know, not enough hobbit.
Not enough hobbit, not enough Mouth of Sauron. They fixed it there was a video game though, wasn't there, where the Mouth of Sauron goes and subjugates the hobbits, I think. At one point. There is a video game. But yeah, other than that, not much of either in terms of what's going on.
Did you play that video game? Was it bad for the hobbits? I'm very concerned.
I'm pretty sure from what I've heard you play as the Mouth of Sauron for most of it, trying to
Oh
no.
I might be misremembering it, but I'm pretty sure that's what you do.
It's not my kind of game.
No.
Yeah, but I love the back and forth about the terms that the Mouth of Sauron is trying to get them to agree to. So he like lays out that they have to withdraw at once and take oaths, and we all know about oaths. Nobody be doing that.
Don't take an oath.
To never assail Sauron in arms, open or secret. Yeah, like I'm gonna agree to not be secretly against you, okay? They must agree that all lands east of the Anduin are Sauron's, and all lands between the Anduin and the Misty Mountains to pay tribute to Mordor. And men there shall bear no weapons. I'm like, what, you're gonna raid everyone of all their weapons? But shall have leave to govern their own affairs. How generous. And they also have to help rebuild Isengard so that the Mouth of Sauron can move in. It's a wild request, and Gandalf knows it, which I love this part when Gandalf is like, this is much to demand for the delivery of one servant, that your master should receive in exchange what he must else fight many more to gain. Or has the field of Gondor destroyed his hope in war, so that he falls to haggling? And if indeed we rated this prisoner so high, what surety have we that Sauron, the base master of treachery, will keep his part? Where is this prisoner? Let him be brought forth and yielded to us, and then we will consider these demands. And at first, it says that for the taking of a breath, the messenger was at a loss. Yet swiftly he laughed again. Like at first, I just imagined being like, oh. And then he's like, wait, I got this. Do not bandy words in your insolence with the Mouth of Sauron. Surety you crave, Sauron gives none. If you sue for his clemency, you must first do his bidding. These are his terms. Take them or leave them. And then this is when Gandalf gets all Gandalf-y. He's like, these we will take. He cast aside his cloak, and a white light shone forth like a sword in that black place. Before his upraised hand, the foul messenger recoiled, and Gandalf coming seized and took from him the tokens, coat, cloak, and sword. These we will take in memory of our friend, but as for your terms, we reject them utterly. Get you gone, for your embassy is over, and death is near to you. We did not come here to waste words entreating with Sauron faithless and accursed, still less with one of his slaves. Be gone. And they use a little bit of this in the movie, like treating with Sauron faithless and accursed. One thing I didn't like about, Gandalf really only talks once in this scene in the movie, and he says that, he tells Sauron to leave and, never come back. And I'm like, really? The goal is to not have a Sauron that can come back. I was just surprised that that's what they went with for Gandalf's line in the movie, because it's like, no, not the goal at all. That one felt a little off in comparison to what they do with Aragorn, which feels good, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Like,
this book scene, like the scene in the book is quite a bit more there's just more. I mean, and now that I realize that this part wasn't even in the theatrical releases,
I know.
like so this bit was 100% described more thoroughly than it was in the movies, but I really liked what happens at the end of the interaction, and it's not a very complimentary description of him. And when I was reading it, all I could think about was Sapphire. I was like, oh no. But the part where he's like, then the messenger of Mordor laughed no more. His face was twisted in amazement and anger to the likeness of some wild beast that, as it crouches on its prey, is smitten on the muzzle with a stinging rod. Rage filled him and his mouth slavered, and shapeless sounds of fury came strangling from his throat. And I was just like, that paints such an image for me of just like, you know, someone just
like
it makes you think of me.
No, well, that's why I was like, wow. Well, I mean, like, that's the
like, how would you even do an impression of that?
It's like how like let's get scene acting out of Sapphire.
I feel like that would be a little bit too difficult for me, unfortunately.
Same. How does a mouth slaver?
But I would have liked to see that on the screen more than the beheading.
Oh
yeah. Have you seen Hamilton, the King George? Oh, what's his name? You know, the King George.
Jonathan Groff.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he's
maybe
spitting everywhere.
Yeah, just a little bit more than that. You know.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I mean, especially when we have in the movies, like we have that in like a giant mouth to work with anyway.
Yeah.
I bet he could have done it. He could have done something weird.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that they do the giant mouth, because obviously if you've seen the cartoon film, they obviously just do a normal guy with a helmet on.
Right.
But obviously in the book, like you said, there's not a lot of description other than that little bit about him there. It's like Peter Jackson just went, no, we're gonna make this guy scary. We're gonna make his mouth huge. We're gonna mess with.
I know
it so you can't see anything but the mouth, and it's a bit like, oh. Okay.
Yeah, it's so PJ, right? He's like, let's go way off script. But it works, you know. It's like, it kind of reminds me a little bit about how he kept making the Witch King's mace like bigger and bigger. But one thing, like when you watch the appendices of the extended edition, and they're talking about like how they were trying to figure out how to design the Mouth of Sauron, at like one point he tried to like flip his mouth on its side.
Oh Lord. Oh God.
Like a slit. It's so messed up.
No.
It's nasty. It's nasty. It's not right. It's not right.
That was too far.
Yeah.
I think we all agree that was too far.
That's too much. That's too much.
Yeah. I think just a big creepy, I mean, like the teeth are enough for me, but
yeah. Well, the one thing I always find interesting with my cosplay is now and again I get someone, usually a guy, who's definitely a like hardcore fan, tell me that I'm too sexy or beautiful as the Mouth of Sauron, and and they're saying it's because I don't like make my mouth all grotesque and everything. And
you know what that also sounds like?
Yeah.
It also sounds like they are a little bit attracted to the Mouth of Sauron without them.
But to be fair, I have found one TikToker whose whole account is about being attracted to the Mouth of Sauron, and they do their thing, but
you know what?
And they found you, of course.
But when they have to come up to you,
yeah,
to be like, I've got a bit of a boner right now. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, absolutely
Put that away.
not.
That's not what this is about.
Like, the thing is that some of them clearly are being nice about it. There was one who was very much like, you aren't accurate. You're meant to be accurate. I'm like, first of all, I'm playing a female version. Thank you very much. That ain't going to be accurate anyway.
You're meant
But
to.
second of all, you're insulting me by calling me pretty.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you understand this, but yeah, it seems to be like some of the hardcore fans don't like the fact that I'm not trying to make my mouth look more like the Peter Jackson version. First of all, I can't magically make it bigger.
But also, it's not even
the problem.
It's not even like lore accurate. So like, what are you mad about? Like,
these are the ones who don't like sexy Sauron cosplays or sexy Gandalfs or really sexy anything. But
my God,
these the ones, yeah.
Then they just don't like Aragorn then.
Yeah, like he's not supposed to have a beard. Why aren't you mad about that? Like so many things, honestly.
I think these are the same people who are worried about the Rings of Power for the same there
is because they're like equating their love for the Peter Jackson movies with accuracy, and it's like, A, it's not real. B, that is not how we judge things. Like, I can, of course, very much love the Peter Jackson movies and also recognize that it's not a perfect representation of the book, because how could it be? Just having a sense of grounding with reality is important, y'all. So like when it comes to things like the Rings of Power, A, you're not even able to compare, like it's not going to be the same type of like lift and adapt. It's taking outlines and like broad strokes of a story and then trying to craft it into more like something like this with dialogue and scenes and moments, you know, rather than just big sweeping events. So
also, if you're going to be mad about anything to do with the Mouth of Sauron, you need to be annoyed that he's not in the theatrical and that he's not been given a bigger part.
100%.
The best character.
Yes. Yes.
100% agree.
And I'm not biased. I swear.
And you know what? Like, I know they never want to be mad at Peter. They always want to be happy with Peter. But like, he didn't even try with his horse. He just gave him a horse.
Yeah, we should have.
And that's the thing that's actually described. Like, I don't even think we've talked about how he described it, but it's mounted upon a black horse for if horse it was, for it was huge and hideous, and its face was a frightful mask, more like a skull than a living head, and in the sockets of its eyes and its nostrils there burned a flame.
Yeah, we definitely should have had like Elder Scrolls Fire Horse happening here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's my steed in Elder Scrolls. So that's why I thought about it. But hold on a second. We seem to have lost Sapphire.
So looks like we did lose Sapphire, but she's gonna come back probably in a few minutes, but we're gonna, while that technological issue works itself out, I think we're gonna dive into what Frodo and Sam have been up to.
We definitely should, yes.
Yeah, because I mean they are really they're the main guys. I mean, if you ask me, they're carrying the ring. It's a big deal. Mouth of Sauron aside, but I think that was all that I wanted to talk about Mouth of Sauron for now. But last time we saw Frodo and Sam in the movies, they had just kind of left the Tower of Cirith Ungol, like no problem. And in the books, it's more of an escape, and it really picks up with like the Nazgul hot on their tail, and we have this group of orcs that are coming, and they have to escape by jumping under a bridge. Like they don't know how far they're gonna fall, and they end up falling into a thicket of thorns, which obviously doesn't sound great, but they thought that they were gonna fall like a really long way. So it's something to catch them is better than not. And in this part, you know, of course, the movie cuts all of this kind of walking out and goes immediately to the part where they are kind of overtaken by this group of orcs. They try to kind of be off to the side and hope nobody notices them, you know, fingers crossed, but of course it doesn't work out that way. But they are mistaken for orcs and just kind of lumped in with everyone else, which is also kind of miraculous. But you know, there are, similar to what we were talking about before, there are some things that happen along the way, and some of these things do happen in the movie, but they happen at a different point in the movie. So for example, there is where Frodo discards his orc mail. That happens technically before they get forced to march, but I understand why they wouldn't have done that in the movie earlier. Just because, like, that would be weird to explain, like, yeah, he only took off some of it, and then, you know, because they are still using it as a disguise. And then we also have the moment when Sam looks up and sees, you know, the clouds move away and they see the stars, and that actually does happen before they run into the orcs, rather than after. But it is like such a beautiful, like, in the movie it's really just, Mr. Frodo, look, there is light and beauty up there that no shadow can touch. And it's, I get it, it's the movie version, it's gonna be shorter, but it's very sweet, right?
Yeah.
But in the book, just because this is the part where, like, it irks me when some people say they don't like Tolkien's style of writing, because then we get, you know, passages like this where it says, the beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. I'm like, oh, also welcome back, Sapphire.
Yay.
I had to go get an ice pack for my phone to cool it down.
Wow.
Yeah, fun fact about the Google Pixel 6, it likes to overheat sometimes when you're doing a lot of recording.
This is also a cell phone review show.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Google Pixel 6
Overheats.
maybe not great for if
Yeah.
you need to be on a Zoom call.
Yeah, so it'd be fine today, apparently not. But yeah, what you were saying about that moment, I think you said about Tolkien's writing, I think some people are a little bit too used to modern writing where it's not as, there's not as much imagery in it, and there's not as much eloquence in, like, you know, and I think they're too used to sort of, she felt really happy and, you know, really basic stuff. And whereas Tolkien, he likes to sort of woo his reader with like gorgeous imagery to sort of put you in that, you know, you feel what they're feeling, you can experience it. Yeah,
I mean, there is a lot of that where it's like, especially if you're in like a spooky moment, there's so many visceral parts of his writing, but there's also like the world building side of it where you're right along the ride with them, like every thicket and thorn, like in this case, but then also like every hill and, you know, major like geographical feature is going to be made clear to you. But I love that
every single one.
Yeah, but it's like that's is part of the taking you into Middle Earth a little bit. It's not just there are hobbits and elves and dwarves. That's this whole place that you can feel and smell and touch almost with the way that he writes.
And I can understand that because I've been to Moseley Park, which has the Hobbit hole, which was the ice sort of cave, and then also it has where he walked a lot and had the trees and everything. And to be fair, I get why he describes them the way he thinks, the way he does, because just walking through the park, it is, you know, he captures just the feel of the trees, for example, beautifully. And actually, if you go into the way he describes that moment, actually, I felt that moment for myself in that park one night when there were stars and they turned off it was one of the days where now and again we do these light shut-offs to like protest energy or different things, and I was fortunate enough to be there. And again, you can just see the stars, and you know, you're surrounded by, there's like water, and then there's the trees, and it is beautiful, and I can understand why he described it how he did.
Yeah, that's lovely. And that sounds like a really cool experience too.
It was.
Jealous.
We'll have to meet you there one day.
I know.
You'll have to visit me.
Yes.
We should,
right.
Andie. We should do a
BRB
tour of
booking
England.
flights.
A Tolkien tour of England.
I'm down.
And see the clock tower at the University of Birmingham that was meant to be the inspiration, and yeah, you have to come by.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I say that
done.
like it's a trip, you know, just that
2023. We're coming, baby.
Travels in the works.
I gotta update my passport. Maybe that's TMI, but I do have to do that.
Should do that.
Same. I love how we're like, oh yeah, passport.
I know, like technicalities.
Yeah.
Because I could just book it, but no. But it will. We'll find a date and we'll book it. But there's like, I understand why some of these, I love that they kept these moments, because there's definitely the possibility of them being axed from the movie, but they are like in a different order, which I think is totally fine, especially given kind of the way that Peter's always kind of pairing action with action, like our hero group A is dealing with a problem, hero group B is also dealing with a problem. Not that either one is A or B, but but then there is all of this walking along this riverbed that they're in that gets cut out, and there's also some moments in there that are a little hairy, like, I mean, aside from their horrible dehydration that they're dealing with, which is very also visceral, and at some point Sam can't even talk about water anymore because he's like, I do, they're desperate for it. But they also have a narrow escape from two orcs that are tracking them, and at this point they're just hiding in like some weeds. Like, I mean, this also kind of harkens back to how small our boys are, but they are saved only because they can't agree to which way the hobbits went, and so like they end up fighting, and I think one ends up killing the other, and then the other one like runs off. So, and Sam is like, oh, thank God that they can't like even hold a conversation, but Frodo is like, yo, that was close, like, because the tracker, I'm surprised that he didn't smell them, but the only reason he didn't is because he was so focused on being right. But like, obviously, if they had gotten a whiff of them, or if they had made a noise, it would have been bad. And we also see the return of Gollum, which Peter Jackson saved for that last, kind of run to the inside of Mount Doom.
Yeah.
Gollum, he doesn't say anything. There's no like confrontation, but Sam finally, Frodo is sleeping in their little hidey hole, and he goes off to find some water, and he does, but on his way, he's not too far away, but he sees something creeping up so nearly where Frodo is, and he's immediately like, oh man, it's Gollum. But Gollum, I honestly don't even think that Gollum would have been afraid of Sam at this point. He probably assumed it was an orc or something, and he runs off. And Sam is able to like get back to Frodo, and he wakes him up to be like, hey, like Gollum is nearby. And Frodo's like, whatever, I'd rather him than an orc. And so he drinks the water, and then Sam takes a nap. But yeah, we get a little glimpse of Gollum again, kind of back to his old ways, insofar as the way he used to track them back at the mines of Moria or along the Anduin. insofar as like he's just like a shape that's there lurking but not necessarily doing anything. But yeah, I do.
Because obviously he went from being like this shape to then being someone like a being we actually know and you start to care about a little bit before he then sort of just completely slips back the other way. And I think that little moment probably did a lot for a lot of people to start that further transition, rather than it being he's been betrayed, he lures them to the spider, and then he's suddenly screaming and grabbing at Frodo and the ring. It's sort of a little between those two things of that descent into I'm just going to run at Frodo and rip it off him. I've had enough. Because then it's that up of he's been watching and waiting, he's been getting impatient, he was almost there, and then an orc interrupted it potentially, but we know it's Sam, and then finally he has enough.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, it's also kind of like we have this you know, Sam not giving a, like, he knows that Gollum isn't dead, but they just don't have like the bandwidth to worry about him. But then we see him pop up again, and it's like, I mean, it is kind of this moment of like, what is Gollum thinking right now? Because we don't really, I mean, we know that his plan with Shelob failed, but you know, it's almost like, is he just nursing that hatred through this whole time? Like, of course, it's hard to tell like how much time has passed in book or movie. Truly, I mean, it's definitely been a few days in the book. In the movie, I don't even know, seconds, you know. But yeah. So, but you know, it's just interesting to think about Gollum's experience during this time, and how I'm assuming that he's just brooding over the loss of the ring, and I'm sure immediately gets to tracking as soon as he can, but that he is still like watching and waiting, and it isn't until that moment at Mount Doom that he really is like, okay, absolutely not, I will not have it, you know, like you can't throw it away. I almost wonder if he's like, but he also doesn't attack Frodo when he probably could have sooner. I don't know. It's hard to know what Gollum was thinking at this point.
Because we know he's got it in him to care about Frodo in a way, and it's whether that part of him's still sort of there, and then it gets to the point where the ring is probably calling out to him to save it, because it's, you know, it's got such, it knows it's got such, you know, sharp claws into him. And
at the same time, it's interesting to think about how close they are. Like, they're fully in Mordor now, but he still seems to be held by his promise on the ring. You know, he swore on the ring to not hurt Frodo and to help him. And
but then the ring's in trouble, or better off, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Allie, any thoughts on Gollum here?
I guess I hadn't like considered it until just now, where I'm like, yeah, where did he go, or like why or when, or what was he doing during that time?
Yeah, it's because it's like I don't believe Gollum would have wanted them to be captured and trying to take the ring at that moment.
No.
And he didn't even want to hurt Frodo himself. He was getting Shelob to do it for him.
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly. So I think he's trying to figure out what the heck how he's going to go about this. Probably. It's probably rough. It almost seems like he was tracking the trackers, because it's not too long after that he shows up. And they sort of lose him again. I mean, obviously Gollum is not gonna go into that horde of orcs that they end up in. So yeah, I don't know. Poor Gollum. His life could have been so different.
The video game with Gollum coming out is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought. I wonder if they'll. I wonder what the gameplay is going to be like as far as like the decisions that Gollum has to make. Like, will it prompt you? You know, like there's some games where it's like you can say something mean to this person, or you can sneak away, or you can make a purchase. You know what I mean? Will it be like Gollum decides to betray this person, or will it be like Gollum? Like, can you make friends in that game? I don't know.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. All I know is there's going to be a lot of sneaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we know anyone that's gonna like bite the bullet and pay and buy that game when it comes out?
Probably a lot of people in our Discord.
Okay, well, we'll have to like talk
and we'll
to
get them to stream it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I watch people. I don't game. I watch people game. that's my thing.
Are you in the Discord, Sapphire?
Yeah, I am. I'm one of those lurkers.
Okay, cool.
I lurk a lot, mainly due to the fact that, I'll be honest with you, I read the book The Return of the King for the first time. When did you ask me to be on this?
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a long time lurker.
I love that.
I know a lot of the stuff from other people talking to me, and I know a lot about the book from other people. I digest a lot of things from those who are more knowledgeable telling me about it. Because of my dyslexia, I prefer to listen and talk than read. But yeah, but I am on the Discord somewhere.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if we stream it or get someone to stream it, then we could have like a little party.
Oh, I would totally be up for that.
That would be fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that'd be fun, even if the game's stupid. Like, who cares?
It's Lord of the Rings content.
Yeah.
We must consume it.
I know. I mean, literally, if you think about it, like, what? It's been, even, like, when did the last Hobbit movie come out? Like, we've been in a drought, you know? Like, there's been nothing for years, and now it's suddenly, like, all, like, you know, like, it Rings of Power, Gollum game, War of the Rohirrim, Moria game. Like,
Moria games.
So.
But yeah, so I don't know, I guess what I thought, or I don't know, what I wondered when I was reading this chapter was Sam's immense care of Frodo. I mean, it's above and beyond. And it's like, I don't know if either of you have this caregiver instinct, but I definitely do, where when if I'm taking care of someone, even if circumstances are really bad, even if I'm in a lot of discomfort myself, I'm able to like hold it together for the person that I'm supporting. And I'm like able to do more if I'm supporting. So like if I was alone in Mordor trying to do this, I would have given up. But if I had someone that I was trying to get through it with me or something, then a lot of strength comes from that. And I guess I just wondered if that was in play at all.
I think so. I mean, it's not the same because, Frodo, they're not like so far in age that it's like Frodo being a dad to Sam, but maybe like an older brother vibe. But I guess I can relate in that, like when I used to work with kids, I would be like the adults, and I would have, so for example, I did these youth sports teams, not because I care about sports, but the organization that I worked with wanted to have something in place so that kids with like little to no resources could, find a way to have fun with movement and, healthy habits. So we would put together these, teams, or you could just come to practice, whatever. But I think some kids like to actually do the winning part, even though we rarely did. But, really just trying to instill a love for like doing stuff with these kids. And there would be times like I've taken them on field trips, or when I was supervising like practices, I would have these volunteers that would actually know how to play the sport, and they would teach the kids. But then at the same time, like, I'm schmoozing with the parents. I'm like making sure that I don't lose any kids, that nobody is getting hurt. And it's almost like a flip or a switch is flipped inside of me where I'm like hyper vigilant. I'm on top of it. Everybody, taking care of all these different situations and emotions. And then as soon as it's over, I would be like crying, or I would be tired, like there were times where I would be carrying a ball of soccer or basketball, it's like as big as me, and I'd be like, I hate this, like I wish I didn't, why am I doing this is so stupid, this, like I don't know why I signed up for this. And then as soon as I see those kids, I'm like, hey, like how's it going, like different person almost, and so I can relate to just Sam hyper focusing on Frodo in this, because to sit and think for 1 second about yourself, I think I would be a puddle, I would just be like, I can't do it, like I'm tired, I'm thirsty, like no. But if I am ignoring my own like feelings and even like physical needs, which I think Sam is absolutely doing with like giving Frodo the last of the lembas bread and all of that, because he is drawing his strength from his love and his support of Frodo.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too when I read it, and I was
yeah,
definitely
sweet.
Identifying with that part of Sam in this part of the book.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell like Frodo is ready to just lay down, and like I mean he's saying like to Sam, like I made this promise to get it as far as I could, and that's what I'm going to focus on, like I can't give my energy to anything else. And so Sam is like, all right, I'm going to make sure you eat, make sure you drink, make sure that we get out of these hairy situations.
I think also for Sam, his promise is different to Frodo's, because Frodo's is I'm getting this ring as far as I can.
Right.
Sam's promise is to stay with Frodo. Sam's promise is to make sure Frodo gets where he's got to go and is able to get there. So
truth.
Sam's whole focus is on Frodo. Yes, because he cares for him and all that. But also, if you think about it, from the very beginning, Sam's one goal was Frodo. That's what's been keeping him going the whole time. Frodo's goal has been to get the ring there, and Sam's job is to get Frodo there. And so giving him the lamb's bread, giving him the water, it's his personal mission that he promised Gandalf from the very beginning. That's what he was going to do. Even before Frodo made his promise.
To take it even further than Rivendell.
Yeah.
Sam
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Making sure Frodo was getting where he needed to go. And I think everybody's like, oh, Sam's the real hero. No, they are equally the hero from that, because they both fulfill their quests. It's just so happened that Sam's involves getting a person to a location instead of getting an object to a location. Yes. Both equally important, because yes, without Sam, Frodo wouldn't have got there. Without Frodo, Sam would have had no mission.
Yeah.
There would have been no one to get there. He never would have been able to get the ring. We've seen it doesn't tempt him, but I believe it doesn't tempt him because he is focused on Frodo.
Exactly. I think that's why I think Sam almost even knows that about himself, because when he realizes that Frodo isn't dead, and he's like, oh, I'm an idiot, like I should have been with Frodo this whole time. It's almost like he knows, like, if I try to because he's precious baby Sam, like, he would have done his absolute best to try to get that ring to Mount Doom, but I think that it would have been a different story had he not had Frodo to motivate him and someone to protect, because while he is pure and precious, and I think it would have, at some point, you probably would have had something similar with Sam not being able to complete it, and potentially sooner than Frodo, because Frodo is almost, in his ability to focus on just getting the ring as far as he can, but because he has Sam, he is able to give up his concerns for everything else, because he knows that Sam will be there for him. But if Frodo by himself, as Frodo had originally tried to do, I don't think he would have gotten there either.
No.
So it's one of those things where, like, I kind of hate the idea that you have to pick a hero, because
you don't have to. Who says
you know what I mean? When people try,
but people try to,
yeah, but it's like you missed it. Like, there is no one hero, and like, if you want to focus on Frodo and Sam, you absolutely can, but ultimately there is no victory without every single member of the Fellowship, including Boromir.
Yeah, and that's the point of the whole thing is that it takes everybody working together.
I know, and yet we constantly see people trying to use this to divide people, and it's like, did you read this?
You missed the whole point.
Yeah.
You got
the
whole forest for the trees thing.
Yeah.
In the movies, they try to show, so a huge thing that stems out of this, Frodo, a lot of people like to do Frodo versus Sam. and Sapphire, I think given the points you just made, you would be an excellent moderator for such a discussion. But
probably not. I'd probably be like, no, both of you shut up, you're both wrong.
You're both wrong. And you're both right.
That's fair, yeah.
But so they show the ring weighing on Frodo in the movies, but a lot of people don't give that enough credit. So, like, my question, I guess, is like, how else could they have visually shown the weight and the burden of the ring? I mean, to me, it shows he's got like these welts on his neck, and it's physically,
and that's not inaccurate either.
No.
You know?
But a lot of people like miss that point where it's like, no, it's not just that he was carrying a trinket somewhere. Like, this thing was affecting him in immense ways. But for I don't know if if people are missing it in the movie, or if the movie's missing it.
For some reason, I don't know where it comes in the movie, but wasn't there a deleted scene, or at least they were filming bits where Frodo looked like Gollum?
They did in Ithilien. They were going to have a moment where Faramir comes above Frodo, kind of like, or has like a vision or something of Frodo being a Gollum-like creature, and they did the makeup and stuff for it.
Oh,
because
I don't think I saw.
Maybe using that, but having it part of, you know how they sleep a lot, like they sleep a lot and they have a bit of passing out moments, whether during that moment they inserted that footage instead and had it so he was worried he was starting being affected. I know it doesn't feel right, but that's the closest I can think of to something that would show it weighing on him, because you couldn't really, unless it's physical, like we already have. I don't think there's much you could do to show it weighing on him other than him being worried that it's going to turn him into something like Gollum.
Yeah, I don't. That is interesting. It's so hard with something like the ring, because it's not just like, there is a physical, like, we know that Sam even feels it, like there's a physical weight to the thing, and like the way it almost seems to kind of debate with you about like the decisions you're making. But it's not the way that this is shot. There isn't any of that like being inside anybody's head. So it would have to be like, you would have to kind of fundamentally change the way that this story is told in order to show like the psychological effects of it. I mean, I think they try with like Frodo snapping at Sam and stuff, but yeah, I do think it goes over some people's heads a little bit. Yeah, the ring, it's doing its own thing here, you know, trying to, and it's almost like, you know, we could think about the line that Gandalf says to Frodo, that there are other forces at work other than just evil in the world. But you would think in Mordor that the ring is like doing its thing of like, especially when you think about how they are kind of lucky in a lot of situations, but they can't be lucky forever. And the ring is like, hey, over here, you know, like to the orcs or something. And it's interesting that like they do get away from the Nazgul. But in the movies, we hardly even see the Nazgul in Mordor, which I don't know. There's just like, there's all these things where it's kind of like almost weirdly balanced of like luck and also danger, you know?
Yeah.
I just find in the books we're really, really given repeatedly appreciation for what a burden this was, but
right,
unless you're looking for it in the movies, I guess I've always wondered that when people bring up that argument where they're like, Frodo didn't do anything. And you're like, no.
Yeah, it is sad. It's I think that for Frodo, I think that I think for me, the problem is that they do it too early in the movies. You know, we're already starting to see that kind of like his reactions to things like super early in Fellowship, and I almost think they could have just saved it all for like the stairs, and once we're in Mordor, like really showing like bam, like he's suddenly kind of different because the ring is so powerful, you know, because it's like it's home, you know. But they could have saved some of that and shown a little bit more of like Frodo's resilience earlier to show like kind of the change, maybe. I don't know. That's my offering.
Yeah.
All right, so we're kind of at the end of our chapter here.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's next time is the big moment, right? We're gonna get to the ring. The next chapter is Mount Doom, and we'll get to see a little bit of like what happens after that. So I mean, that's really it. I know that we're gonna finish the Black Gate opens with seeing the actual fighting that happens with the other part of our fellowship as well in the movie. But really the main thing is like big boom. But which we'll talk about all the variations of that between the book and the movie next time. We'll also be welcoming Kelly from the Middle Page blog, which is Middle Page on Instagram and the middle.page on TikTok. So that'll be awesome. And really just want to say like a huge thank you to Sapphire for joining us for this episode. You know, it's like we're having the Mouth of Sauron talk about the Mouth of Sauron. So pretty cool.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it despite the technical glitches.
Yeah,
well, thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure like chatting with you though and hearing your ideas, and always love to connect with other Tolkien fans.
Yeah. So we're gonna book that trip and then we'll call you, we'll align calendars, and eventually we'll get, maybe one day we'll be like one of those podcasts where it's like, join us for a live recording session in a fancy place. That would be fun. I'm just dreaming big now, but
I'm in the middle of the country, so I'm in the middle of the UK. So, you know, if you came to visit me, you could pop off to different places and it only take a few hours. So
perfect.
All right. I don't know if you know what you're signing up for, but we're coming.
Oh, I'm more than happy to have you guys. Don't worry.
Awesome. Well, this was super fun. We'll definitely, maybe if you want to join us again for The Hobbit, you're more than welcome to. But you know, in the next few weeks, we're going to be wrapping up Return of the King, and which is crazy to say. I almost don't believe it. But yeah,
it's been quite a journey for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we can get more of that when we get to the wrap up episode. But yeah, it's a coming. You know, I like. Whenever I'm looking at the time markers on the movie, I'm like, oh, wow, we're like getting close to the end. You know, I'm saying 3 hours in. I mean, luckily, Return of the King is like extended. It's like 4 hours long. So we still got like an hour-ish of movie left. But yeah, we're winding it down, and we're getting to the climax of the whole story.
Awesome.
But
Can't wait.
yeah. So join us next time for the big Mount Doom moment. And thanks again to everybody for being here.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.